All right, so we will get started here. I think we've got most of the people who registered, but we'll certainly be watching out for others as they join up. This webinar, in case you missed it, is about what you need to know about PPP. And we're targeting it to local food businesses so that you guys can get your questions answered and make sure you're all prepared for exploring this opportunity. So want to send a special shout out thanks to Northeast Michigan Council of Governments for supporting us to put on this webinar. Thanks to June Foyt and Tom McFadden from SBA for joining us today. They're going to be sharing the bulk of the content here today. And we've got Michael Nunneley from the SBDC here to chat about some of their consulting services as well. So without further ado, I will kick it off to June.
Well, I want to say thank you for having us. We really appreciate it, and hopefully we can get good information to everyone. So I wanted to start off and just say that SBA has been around since 1953. We are here to be an advocate for small business, and so that's how we can help. So next slide. So I wanted to quickly talk about our consulting resources. So we have one office, our main office is in Detroit, and we do have a one-man shop in Grand Rapids. So we are located in Detroit. We handle the whole state of Michigan. So we are out there when it's not COVID, we are out traveling around and making sure whatever is needed. So we do travel the whole state. What I wanted to talk about, the first, one of our first resource partners is a Small Business Development Network. It's a network of centers that are funded in part by SBA. SBDC has paid certified business consultants, and they offer classes, great marketing tools, low-cost classes, expertise in technology, and one-on-one mentoring. And I'm sure Michael, who's going to be on, will explain more detail, but it's a great resource for small business owners. Next, we have Women Business Center. We have 3 in Michigan. They're located in Benton Harbor, Grand Rapids, and Livonia. Each one tailors its services to the need of the local community. They provide training in finance management, marketing. They also do counseling and mentoring. The Great Lakes Business Council, which is located in Livonia, is the only center in Michigan that allows you to be WBENC, which is Women Business Enterprise National Council certified, which really means that you can be certified for corporate America as a women-owned small business. They have a great women's marketplace that you can upload your info. So they're another great resource. Next, we have SCORE. So SCORE they are counselors donating their time to provide counseling to small business. They have experts in every industry and area of business. They offer workshops. They like to say they can be a mentor for the life of your business. So they also like to say they've been there, done that. So they try to hook you up with somebody in the area or the field that your business is in, so that, you know, that's what they try to do when they're mentoring. They're another great resource. And the last one we have the Veterans Business Outreach Center. And they handle 3 states, Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan. Their name is Vet Biz Central. They're located in Flint. And really what they are, they're veterans that help veterans and in business. So if you're thinking of starting, or you're already in business, they offer mentoring and workshops. I like to send veterans to we call them the VBAC, the Veteran Business Outreach Center, because they usually have their feet on the ground for veterans in business. So if something's going on or something happens in the veteran world, they're the first ones pretty much that know what's going on about it. So all these resources are great for you. They're no cost to you as a business owner because they're prepaid by your tax dollars. So please, take advantage of them all. And so that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Now, let's get on to the PPP. I know where most of I would like to introduce my counterpart. His name is Thomas McFadden. He's our lender relations specialist, and he's going to talk about the PPP. Go ahead, Tom.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. If you can't hear me for some reason, just put something in the chat. I presume that my audio is coming through okay. I think I'm seeing a nodding head. Good. Yes, my title is Lender Relations Specialist. I like to refer to myself as a recovering banker. I spent about 20 years or so in the commercial lending business with banks and other financial companies. So, that's kind of helped me. And I've also owned my own business too. So that helps me a little bit, I think. Let me see if Wendy here, if I can update my audio or increase it. Hold on here. Record chat. Audio, hold on. Audio settings. Okay, so I've increased that. Hopefully that will help you be able to hear me better. Wendy, let me know if that's better. The first round of the PPP ended in August. Thank you, Wendy. Ended in August, and we had a really significant impact in the state of Michigan, in that first round. Just for our state, we did almost 124,000 loans for over $16 billion, 16 with a B. So we're hoping that we'll be just as successful with this new round, and that we can get this, much needed, money out to businesses like yours. Next slide, please. So our agenda, we're going to talk about where we are right now, some of the key dates, and then we're going to talk about two different kind of PPP loans, and I'll explain that as I get to the slides. First draw PPP, second draw PPP, and then we'll talk a little bit about forgiveness, and then most importantly, number 5, now that you've gotten a little bit better information, what should you do and what are additional resources for you, okay? So yes, thank you so much. Hey, just while I'm thinking about resources, let me send, oops, wrong one. I'm going to put in the chat my email. Don't hesitate to reach out. You'll find that that's the best way to get a hold of me, is via email, but you can always call me as well. I'll put that in there too. Okay, good. So where we are right now. Okay, so Congress and the president, when they signed this new bill, or the ex-president now signed this new bill on December 27th, they really wanted to increase the focus on some of the hardest hit small businesses and those in underserved segments. So, we're working with women, minorities, and veteran-owned businesses. So, early on, we opened PPP loan applications to submissions from community financial institutions, minority-owned banks. We have some what we call CDFIs, community development financial institutions, knowing that they would serve, some of these underserved markets first. So they had the first couple of days of the program opening, which I think was Thursday of last week. So hopefully we got, we got a lot of the underserved segments, got a jump start, so to speak. We're leveraging leveraging our lender match platform. And all you have to do is go Google SBA space lender space match. And that's a platform. If you don't know, who would be a good lender for you, you can put in 9 different pieces of information, very basic stuff. And then lenders compete to talk to you and find out about your business and possibly lending to you, whether it's a PPP loan or other. We've had great success. We've matched thousands of businesses throughout the country through Lender Match. So don't hesitate to utilize that if you don't know of a lender that could help you. And what else we're doing is, we're continuing to provide trainings, materials, and assistance through people like me, all through the country. And not just through me, but through our partners, people like the Small Business Development Center and some of the other resource partners that June talked about just a minute ago. Next slide, please. So these are some of the key dates. We're past all of them except the last 2 I want to talk about is on yesterday, we opened first and second draw applications, which I'll explain in a minute, to all participating lending institutions. So the great flood of money and applications started yesterday. We're having very good success getting loans into our system. We've learned a lot from some of the technical difficulties through which we struggled in the spring of last year. And, the just under $300 billion that Congress and the president allocated for this program are starting to go out the door. Now, very important, by March 31st, all PPP applications must be submitted. Now, while we do say that, my word to you is we do not know how long this money will last. And it is possible that Congress could allocate additional funding for this program, but don't count on it. The application is not particularly difficult. We'll talk a little bit about some of the things that are going to be required. And, don't wait. Obviously, if you think you could benefit from this program, I would recommend, as soon as you get off this call, you can go get an application, start putting that information together, and make that application tomorrow. It shouldn't be particularly difficult for most of you to do that. Okay, next slide. All right. Oh, and just remember, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. So, don't hesitate. We'll answer them at the end of the presentation today, but while you're thinking about it, put that question in there. Okay. So as I talked about a couple slides earlier, there are really 2 draws, 2 types of PPP loans under this new act. Okay. The first one is the first draw PPP loan. Now, who's eligible for that? That's for anybody who didn't get a PPP loan prior to August 9th of last year. Okay, so some weren't able to get their information together. Some didn't think they needed it. Some were frustrated by the process. So if you did not get a PPP loan, you would apply for a first draw PPP loan. Okay, now a couple things are really important, and we'll get into that. Another slide will show some eligible expenses. Oh, and I'm sorry, well, I don't mean to, let me get off the road for a second. Are we going to be, do you have the email addresses so we can send this presentation to everybody when we're done?
Yep.
Okay, good. I see you nodding your head. Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay. Many more entities are eligible than were before. And even more important is that covered eligible expenses are expanded. That was one of the things that was a frustration for a lot of PPP borrowers on the last draw, was that while we had to spend most of it on payroll, which is still the case, What they could spend on the other amounts was limited to utilities and loan payments and a couple other things. Well, under this new law, we still have to spend 60% of the proceeds have to go toward payroll, but the other 40% can be spent on almost any other reasonable business expense. The biggest thing that you cannot do is refinance debt. So you can't trade off, a term loan that you might have from your bank or credit union and pay that off with your PPP loan proceeds. Okay. Now you can select a covered period to use PPP loan proceeds. It used to be you had to spend, okay, I'm going to decide to spend my money in 8 weeks or 24 weeks. Well, you don't have to do that anymore. It's anywhere between 8 and 24 weeks. Okay, as soon as you've spent your money, then you can go and take that next step of applying for forgiveness. Okay. And then certain borrowers, if you already got a PPP, certain borrowers may request an increase to their original PPP loan amount. Now, while what we say there in the bullet is true, I was also told by our agency that that's going to be few and far between. So I wouldn't, unless you feel like you have a special circumstance or you have a way to substantially increase your original PPP loan, you're probably better off just going for the second draw, which we'll talk about in a moment. And again, you have to apply on or before March 31st or when congressional appropriations expire. In other words, as soon as we run out of money, then we just have to turn off the spigot. So as I said before, apply as absolutely soon as you possibly can. Okay, next slide. Okay, first draw PPP loan eligibility. Okay, what's eligible? Well, I guess I'm going to flip it, and it says at the bottom there, it says still eligible businesses. Everything I'm hearing about, partnerships, corporations, LLCs, all the folks here sound like you're going to be eligible. Sole proprietors. I don't know if we have any nonprofits that might be possible, veterans organizations, tribal businesses that are still eligible. And then going back up, okay, newly eligible are, and I don't think this applies to anybody that we talked about, housing cooperatives, destination marketing organizations. So it might be like a county tourism board kind of thing. And then certain what they call 501c6 organizations. And a good example there is a chamber of commerce. They might be eligible. And then certain nonprofit news organizations could be eligible. Now at the top there, it does say it has to comply with size standards and there are other limitations, okay? But most businesses are going to meet those. Size standard, generally speaking, is 500 or fewer employees. That's one of the biggest limitations. I also should mention, if you take a look at the bottom of this slide, sba.gov/PPP is a great place to go for a ton of information. We are constantly updating that as we are, still figuring out this brand new program and getting it out there. So you can do that. You can certainly, pop me an email and I'm happy, to help you. Next slide, please. So that was the first draw PPP loan. Let's talk about second draw PPP loans, okay? So for borrowers that previously received a PPP loan under the prior, what we call the first round, which closed at the beginning of August, as long as you have 300 employees or less and suffered a 25% reduction in gross receipts, you're going to be eligible for a second draw PPP loan. Now, for most borrowers, as it shows in that first bullet, it's 2.5 times your average monthly payroll costs up to $2 million, but for some in the accommodation and food services sector, and I think some of you may very well apply here, you can get 3.5 times up to $2 million. So if you're not sure what your NAICS code is, take a look at your tax return. Typically, I believe the first page of your tax return has to show that NAICS code. Okay, so if it starts with that 7.2, you could be eligible with for 3.5 times. Now, it says second draw PPP loan applicants must submit the information on that SBA form 2483-SD when applying. That's very easy to find. You just go to that our website, sba.gov/PPP. Now, I do want to say when you apply for a lender, many of you will not actually give them a form. You won't even scan, scan the form in. What you would do is you take that form, and that's how you get all your information together and you know what they want. And then the lender will have their own loan portal, and you'll go in, you'll log in, and you'll essentially take the information that you gathered through that 2483-SD, and that'll have everything in there. So you can just type, and put it in there. And frankly, that's probably the easiest way, because then you don't have to worry too much about typos and transposition numbers and all that. You can take a quick look at it, but it depends. Some depends upon your lender. Okay, so and it didn't really say that. I guess this program does assume that there is some familiarity among the seminar participants. Remember, PPP is applied for through your local bank, credit union. There are some of the fintechs that are part of that. NewTek, NEWTEK. They are just an online financial institution, Cabbage with a K. Now, you certainly can go and apply any place you want, and most lenders in the United States are participating in this. At the same time, it's our experience that you're going to have the best success with by applying through a financial institution where you already have a relationship. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have a lending relationship. You may simply have a checking account there. Well, at least they know, right, that you've been able to maintain your checking account. If you have loans or other, even personal business, that all helps. Now, there may be instances where you don't want to apply there, and that is up to you, right? I mean, that's the beauty of being a business owner, is you make the decisions yourself about where you want to apply. And if you, in your own business judgment, decide you want to apply somewhere else, you go right ahead and do that. Okay. All right. Next slide. Okay. Eligibility. You must have previously received a first draw PPP loan. Okay. Now, and additionally, you have to have used or will use your full first draw PPP loan amount. That doesn't seem to be too much of a problem, since we haven't had any funding for this program for a few months. But you have to, even if you haven't used it, your lender will ask, are you going to spend the rest of this? And, they may make that part of the loan file, your answer. You cannot have more than 300 employees. Now, the agency and Congress and the president, in their intent with this legislation, wanted to make the focus on smaller businesses. So that's why there are no more than 300 employees allowed. And that's why the maximum loan amount, which I think I talked about, is $2 million. It used to be 10 million. It's been reduced to 2. And this very important point, you can demonstrate at least a 25% reduction in gross receipts between comparable quarters in 2019 and 2020. Now, there are a couple of things you should know. they have to be, you can't say, oh, well, January through March in 2019, compare it to July through September. It has to be the same months within each year. Now, in some cases, it doesn't work, that number doesn't work, but it may work for the whole year, and that's absolutely fine. You can do that in the buried in the fine print of our documentation is you can use all of 2020 and compare it to 2019. And as long as you have at least a 25% reduction, then you're in good shape. Now, one thing I do want to say, especially because we're talking about second draw here, we're talking about your receipts for your business, your operating receipts. So you, for example, you wouldn't say, oh, I got a PPP loan and it was forgiven. Do I count that as income? Your accountant would count that as income. But for the purposes of this calculation, those kinds of monies do not count. Okay, we're not trying to find ways to not get you money. We want to do everything we can within the rules to get you your money. And our goal, I can assure you, is to make sure that it all gets forgiven. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, forgiveness. Okay, just like you apply for a PPP loan through your lender, you apply for forgiveness through your lender in the same way. So the lender gets the information, goes through it, asks any questions, and then they submit that to the SBA, who takes a look at it and for the most part is going to approve that without questions. Okay. Now, I think this is an important recommendation, regardless of whether you have a first draw PPP or second draw PPP. Open up a separate checking account and put all your PPP money in there, and then spend your PPP money through that same account. Because ultimately, your financial institution is going to have to show to my agency that the money was spent as required. And if you keep that segregated from the rest of your other expenses, it's going to make your life a lot easier. So again, we've found as a best practice that you should open a separate checking account, put your PPP money and spend it out of there. Now, idle advances. For those of you who got an economic injury disaster loan, you may recall that you got $1,000 per employee up to $10,000. Earlier, until this law changed it, we were deducting that advance from your forgiveness payment. That has been changed by the law, so that won't be deducted. Okay. All PPP loans are not taxable income. The new law, the Economic Aid Act, changed that. And expenses paid with PPP loan funds are now tax deductible. Okay, it's always good to have a good accountant. I'm a big believer in CPAs, but if you're more of a do-it-yourselfer, you can go to irs.gov, and they have just within their website, do a search on PPP, and they will have particular rules for you. Okay. And here, as it says, expanded forgivable expenses are permissible for any PPP loan not already forgiven. So if somebody wasn't able to get all their money forgiven, but then they spent other money that might be forgiven under the new expanded rules, they should go back, talk to their lender, and make an amended forgiveness application to get all that money forgiven. Okay. Now it says here, as it says, coming soon, simplified forgiveness application for PPP loans, $150,000 and under. That's a very, very large percentage of our PPP loans. I think over 80% are under 150. And the law has provisions for simplified forgiveness, where the agency is so focused right now on getting money out the door for the second round of PPP that we just haven't had time to put together that simplified forgiveness application. But that will be coming soon. I would expect that we'll see that sometime next month. Next slide, please. So what do you do now? Okay, contact your lender. Okay, as we talked about before, if you don't have a lender, you can find one on Lender Match, right? If you don't want to use the Lender Match platform, that's fine. Just start calling financial institutions nearby you, or look online for fintechs like Cabbage or NewTek, and they may very well be happy to take your PPP. Most, not all, but most financial institutions in the state of Michigan, and indeed in the country, are participating in PPP. And as I've said, hopefully at least 5 times, if not, then I need to say it 5 times now, visit sba.gov/PPP for the most up-to-date documents. Now, also additional resources, you can contact us. There's a website. You also already have my email and phone number. Okay. I'm a big believer in signing up for SBA e-newsletters. It's very simple. It takes, all you need to do is put in your email address and your zip code into sba.gov/updates, and we'll start sending you information. And then you can see we have a general contact us email at michigan@sba.gov. So I think the next slide says questions, but we're going to hold questions till the end. Is that right? Yes. So ignore this slide, but please, any other questions? And Susan, I see your question. Please stay on, because yes, you're going to still be eligible. So now our next speaker is a friend of mine, Mike Nunneley, who is up in your area working for the Small Business Development Center. They are a wonderful organization. June early on talked about all the great help that they can give for you. But Mike, I'd like you to introduce yourself and talk about your organization. Mike, take it away.
Thanks, Tom. And so I too am a reformed banker, so don't hold that against Tom and I. We're both pretty nice guys, I promise y'all. But the Small Business Development Center is funded by the SBA and by the Michigan EDC, and then host agencies like Saginaw Valley State University in my particular area. We cover the entire state of Michigan, both lower and upper peninsula. And literally it is just a simple registration for our services. So right now, one of the things that we are helping with in a lot of cases are helping people through the PPP process. We're also helping them through the EIDL process and the multiple state and local grants that are available right now. So if those types of applications seem a bit daunting, please do not hesitate to sign up for our services, and we're more than happy to assist. In normal, non-COVID times, we also assist startup businesses, existing businesses with their marketing plans, business transitions if they're looking to sell their business and on to the next generation of owners. We also have a variety of specialized groups that we offer. All of these folks are, again, at no charge. And so, if you have any questions, if you have any challenges in your business, whether it's related to the current pandemic programs that we're discussing today, or you're just looking for, maybe someone to bounce some ideas off of, whether it be a startup or an expansion of your existing business, which we're seeing a lot of right now because of, the COVID challenges, where businesses of all types, just like the reason, our host and the Taste the Local Difference, addresses those, those challenges. We're seeing that each and every day with our most successful businesses, looking at, revenue streams they never dreamed of before because they didn't have to think about it. So, we're here to help and assist in any way and to support you. And so, you can visit our website, and I'm sure that we'll be sharing our contact information with all of you. And please, again, feel free to register, or you can always contact me directly if you have any questions. So I'm not sure who I'm kicking this over to next.
I'll take over from you, Michael. Thank you so much. So I just want to open the floor now to questions for folks. Again, I want to stress what Tom and Michael and SBDC have expressed here today, that these dollars are meant for small businesses like yours. So it's really, the process is very simple. The forgiveness process is very simple. It's just up to you to take that first step and contact your lender and get the ball rolling, because this money is here for you to help you through this year, and exploring it now is the thing to do. As Tom said, we don't know how long those funds will be available long term, and now's the time to explore it. So does anybody have any questions right now? I guess I wanted to maybe ask you, Tom, to expand a little bit further on the opportunity given to food service providers, because you mentioned that they can get 3.5 times, I think, the payroll amount, and most of these food businesses here are farms or food businesses. So would love to maybe hear a little bit more about that. But with Stacy on the line here, she says, what if I have no employees? Is she still eligible?
Well, that is not a problem. We have a whole bunch of different types of businesses, and the statute and the rules that we've come up, handled most businesses. I'm not sure, Stacy, how you pay yourself, whether it's, very often, and I'm sorry, I'm starting to sound like an accountant, but it would be through your Schedule C. You would show, your income would be your net income there, and your Schedule C would show as your payroll, typically as your gross payroll, so that you'd be eligible for that. But there are a whole bunch of other rules pertaining to that too. So, pop me an email and I'll lead you to where we can talk about how that's calculated. But absolutely, you do not have to have employees to do that. Also, another one of the questions we got is, we took a loss last year, it says, because we did a big expansion of our farm. Are we still eligible? Absolutely. It's not based on, typically it's kind of strange, because you think of, well, what's my income? That's not what we look at. Now, I'm not sure how you set up your business, what corporate form it takes, but we look at it based on what is your payroll. And I should say the payroll isn't just, quote, net payroll. It includes a very broad listing of things, including withholding taxes, including unemployment, including money that you may be regularly setting aside for retirement. All those monies can go into that PPP pool, and then you don't have to spend it all on payroll, but you have to spend at least 60% of it on payroll. So it's a very, very broad calculation on how you get those, on how you determine, or how we determine under our rules how much money you can get. It's very different. The EIDL program, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, they look at it much more differently. They, pull credit reports, they take collateral, all the things that make it, much more difficult. And then, even though with EIDL, you don't have to pay for a year, eventually you do have to pay it back, albeit over a 30-year period. So PPP is a very different type product in the fact that it's, can be completely forgivable makes it a great option for most businesses.
Any other questions, folks?
Oh, somebody said here, I see, are the venue grants going through this program also? There are a couple of, that's not a PPP program. I don't have a great knowledge on that, but that's run through a separate program. If you send me an email, I'll get you to a couple hyperlinks where you can find out more about that. But yeah,
Yeah,
that
and
just came out less than a week ago.
yeah, it's not actually out yet, I don't think, but it will be.
Thank you, June. Oh, that's a good question here. Somebody asked, can the reduction be done with cash or accrual accounting? We have asked for a policy request on that, and that can be a little bit difficult for some businesses that have more complex accounting needs. I think what I would suggest is take a look first at your tax returns. And I think if you can look at tax return, 2020 and tax return 2019, and it gets you to that 25%, I think you're home free. That's always the easiest because, those numbers are verifiable. Now, I know it's maybe a little hard because it's still so darn early, in the process, but, that may be, if you can find a way to get your tax returns done, that might be the path of least resistance for you.
Tom, it doesn't look like Kathy has a question about her application, but just to be clear, even those that were not able to receive, that applied earlier and did not receive PPP funds, they're able to apply for the first draw again?
Yes, absolutely. That would be an example of a first draw PPP. And the good thing is, because of the retroactive nature of the new law, you could spend that money once you get it on a whole bunch of other stuff. Then, more than you could, if you had gotten your money and spent it by October, for example.
Great. Wonderful.
Yeah, one thing I do want to say too is, another good reason to sign up for the SBA updates is, there's certainly no guarantees, but there may very well be other follow-up programs. I think it was encouraging, and this is more politics than policy, but when the nominee for Secretary of the Treasury, Janet Yellen, was in front of the Senate yesterday, she was really encouraging Congress and the new president to go big rather than go small. So there may be opportunities for additional programs. And, we will, as soon as we, hear things, we will certainly pass them along to you. We don't want you to miss, opportunities to, to get your money here.
Yeah, and I will say having that connection to those updates is really helpful because things change frequently about, as this program was developing originally and just as the process is being fine-tuned. So absolutely agree with the signing up for the SBA newsletter and simply connecting with your local lender so that you've got that personal connection and they can keep you in mind, even if you don't technically apply right now. Although, as we say, highly recommended to apply. It looks like we have another question in the Q&A from Phil. He's talking about not having any payroll. So it looks like we never paid ourselves as a payroll, but took the loss or profit as an LLC. I think it's kind of tying into that question that was asked earlier by Stacy. Is that correct, Tom? Sounds the same, to kind of let you know if they don't have a payroll, it's still possible to, if they have no employees, it's still possible to apply. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. My guess is that it's going to show up as, look at your tax return. I think that profit is going to show as Schedule C income. And, if that's the case, that would be the amount that would be eligible for PPP. So, so you're lucky if you haven't done it now, because it took us about 5 months to figure that one out. So you would have been very frustrated applying in April or May. I would just say too, I'm a big believer in, getting help with something like this. Most of us are not professional Paycheck Protection Program folks. So, people like Mike, you may, have one PPP application. He's probably looked at a few hundred, would be my guess. Don't hesitate to work with your tax preparer or, your accountant, CPA, whatever. Get help from them too. Because I would hate for you to say, oh, I don't want to spend $500 on my, accountant. And then you end up missing out on, $20,000 of money that is fully forgivable. Especially if that helps speed things up and you're concerned that it might take you too long to get your application in.
Great advice. All right, any final questions for our panelists, folks? I will be pulling this recording together and emailing it out to all who registered, so you'll get that. And if the panelists are comfortable, I know, Tom, you've shared your email address, but if other panelists are comfortable, I'll share theirs as well. That way you have all the contact information you could need.
If I can say one last thing, I put in the chat, I don't have any direct knowledge, but the USDA may have a lot of other programs. I know Argus is not Northeast Michigan, but they have folks here, but they have, for Northeast Michigan, they have an office in West Branch. And in the chat, I put the phone number, with the extension. Don't hesitate to look and, give them a call and find out.
Great. All right. If there's no final questions, I just want to say thank you again to June and Tom and Michael. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate all the attendees joining today to learn a little bit more too. And as we've said, please explore this opportunity and connect with your local lender and those who can help. There's a lot of opportunity here for you, and we just want to see small businesses succeed. So please let us know if you have any questions. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.